In Excel, it is quite easy to create formats such as we have here in this sales data file that look like little mini tables. That is a slight difference to telling Excel that we are dealing with a table. Now we have a number of ways of telling Excel that a set of data is a table. And the first is to just use the keyboard shortcut, Control T, and that will bring up the Create Table dialog box. Now you'll notice it highlights what it thinks is the data, which is this set of information here, and asks if my table has headers. I'm going to cancel that for the moment. Another way of effectively creating this into a little table is to actually just go to the home ribbon and say Format as Table. Choose one of the table formats that you like the look of. But then the first step before it even thinks about formatting is to create a table. It pops up very similar box that we saw. That one said Create Table, this one says Format as a Table, and it highlights the same cells where it thinks the data is. We're going to cancel that as well, and then look at the third option, which is to go to the Insert ribbon and choose Table. And again, it highlights the cells that it thinks are the table. Now I'm going to say cancel, and instead of letting Excel decide where the table is, I'm going to highlight the cells that are effectively my table cells, which is not the January Sales Corp heading at the top. It is all the column headings for each of the values and the row headings, including the total row. Then I'm going to go to Insert Table, and it now has my range. When I create a table from it by saying OK, each of my table headings now have little column drop downs, so auto filters already in place. I also suddenly get a Table Tools Design Context Sensitive ribbon, which is not there if I click outside the table. So now that I have a table, I can control some of the formatting. I can choose a different style, and that will control the style of my table. I can choose whether from the styles I want to use the header row pattern or not, banded rows, total row to be a different format. So you can see it puts that underneath it because my table actually includes the total row rather than it being placed below. For this particular table, I can't use the total row because I already have one. First column being different, the last column being different, and then banded columns, only if the style I choose has them. If I choose this one here that has banded columns as well as rows, then the banded columns is in place. But I can always turn that off so it doesn't use them, and whether the filter button is there or not. So you saw it arrive by default, but I can then turn that off. Having a table also allows me other options such as refreshing the data if it's an external set of data, exporting the data, so I can export that to a SharePoint list, inserting a slicer, summarizing this table with a pivot table, removing any duplicates, or converting it back to a range of cells. So effectively takes it out of this table format into cells format, which means I can then format each of the cells separately as just normal cells on my sheet. That's how to turn a set of data into a table, which then will have its own ribbon for you to choose or activate, deactivate options that you like.